your list. So
Okay, good. Yeah, yeah, no, and basically, so do you have any questions we should cover? Well, whatever.
mm, no, not at the moment, but if something because I'm very forgetful, so it's probably something in the back of my mind somewhere. So if
All right, cool. So yeah, that's fine. So these are all in Brett. So I'll just show you what I do on a quick. Is anybody else on? Because I know I'm very very late, and I probably won't. I don't see anybody else on.
I don't see no.
No. Okay. So anyway, if people are on YouTube, just text me because I haven't quite figured out how to monitor the YouTube chats yet. Um, but anyway, so a couple things. One of which isn't going to matter probably to anybody, but I'm probably moving the company offices. Um, Bluntly, I'm in a 700 square foot space, and usually I'm the only one here. And I've got a 500 square foot space that I own out at Harvey's Lake, about 20 minutes west of here. And I'm like, you know what? I might as well pay myself the rent, move out there. If people come over, there's room to meet and room to talk and room to train. But for the 90% of the time, I'm paying myself the money. So it doesn't mean anything for those of you who don't come here. For those of you who do, you might drive another 15 minutes. Um, we're also going to be, for you licensed folks, offering a change in compensation if you want it. It's hard to do for the unlicensed side of things, but we're going to be offering a change in compensation to, you can do the 80/20, or you can do a monthly fee plus a flat rate on each deal. If that's something people find more interesting, then that's totally fine. And we have basically all but signed an agreement with a guy who's a leader in the sub 2 community to both help grow the brokerage firm and the agency side, as well as to bring his deals and his team's deals through the brokerage firm, which will just increase our visibility. We'll be partners on a meetup in Stroudsburg, a meetup in, I think he's going to start one down toward North Jersey or down that way. And then we're also going to start one or two more out here. So, we're basically trying to grow our footprint, and he's already looking at a couple of agents. He's also going to be a recruiter guy for us. So that will bring in more opportunities for stuff for people to work on. That'll also bring on more visibility to us. So when people say to us, hey, I know Will has faced this a couple times. Well, gee, down in Philly, Gorilla, who the hell's Gorilla? Well, now it'll be a better thing because we're going to have we're going to have a professional full-time photographer who's also going to be one of our agents, who's going to be our head of content. So we're going to sort of scale that stuff up. So it'll increase, I guess, company deal flow, which doesn't really matter too much, but it'll increase visibility and credibility, and it'll also give us an onboard guy who's a leader in Pace Morby's community, who wants to help everyone do sub 2s. Basically, if he helps you with a sub 2, there'll be a deal with you and him, and he gets something for helping. But basically, we'll have an actual Pace student and success story available to help us guide. And sub 2, for those of you who don't understand, sub 2 is Pace's branded term of subject to, which means buy the property without telling the bank about the original mortgage changing. No, don't change the name on the deed. Don't change the name on the original mortgage. Buy the property subject to its original debt. So that was why I was late, and this is sort of we've been having these negotiations. It was supposed to be tabled. It was supposed to be 30 minutes, and those last half dozen details just take longer. So any other questions, anybody, before I go into how to do this self-storage evaluation? Okay. Oh, and one more thing, guys, and I have not started mine. I'm just flagging it. If you're licensed, May 31st, you're no longer licensed if you haven't updated your shit. So if you're licensed, get your shit updated. Get your continuing ed done. Blah, blah, blah. If you're getting licensed, and I just want to say this and refer to my other video about continuing ed from ceshop.com and any questions, call me. The other thing is, for those of you who are not licensed, who are working through trainings and working through, and you know what? I got to text Connor about the Ohio deal. So what I'm texting Connor about right now, which would be great if I'd spelled his name right. So probably 2 years ago, Connor brought us a deal in Farrell, Pennsylvania, which is some northwestern-ish, or definitely western Pennsylvania. I'm not sure if it's northwestern, multifamily deal. And the family owned a property in Ohio that was, and still is, a dome. And blah, blah, blah. They weren't willing to release it at the time. They called me back on Friday and said, hey, we're willing to release it for a number that at the time Connor and I thought were right. So I just dumped it right back to Connor and said, hey, do this. Now, there's good and bad to this story. The good is they called us. The bad is we weren't keeping in touch with them. They listed one of the other properties with another broker. Probably the right choice because the other property was an operational or is an operational deli. So probably not something that we need to, not something we can really touch because we can't compete on an operational deli with a local broker. They're probably right to do that. Connor has not yet gotten his license. He's one of the unlicensed people. I just said, hey guys, if you're still working on your license 2 years later, kind of get off the pot and do it. I realize it's hard with a real job and whatever, but just get the hurdle out of the way. Everybody, you get paid more, I get paid less. Why not do it? So the good news is this lady called us back and we have a potential opportunity in Eastern Ohio somewhere. The bad news is we lost the opportunity on the deli because we weren't keeping in touch with her. Would we have gotten it? Don't know. Whatever. And the other thing is Ryan and I had a double that we thought was going to be pretty exciting. That was going to be very exciting. Guy had a double, making a little bit of money, not enough. He was willing to sign the deal at 65. We sent him the contract at 65. Meanwhile, he called his neighbor up who owns rental property and said, listen, who's been jerking around on buying the place, and said to the neighbor, hey, listen, I have an offer I'm about to sign. The offer immediately, the other guy immediately offered a contract at 20 grand more. So we're going to get those. We're going to have those conversations, and they're going to be a swing and a miss, but still have them. Oh, no, did you bring us Jeanette?
Yes.
Okay. So we're waiting for the partner on Jeanette to sign. And the guy you talked to, which he's agreed to, but for some reason, the partner that you and I talked to is having trouble getting his other partner's name and email address.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't seem like it's a high bar, but okay. So that one we think we're getting for the 77 4-week due diligence.
Okay.
The other one, he has a land up here that I'm about to list once he signs the listing agreement. Even though it's a listing, it's small money, but you'll get something out of that as well too.
Okay.
Anyway, so within Tract IQ, which for those of you who want to, I can share to a few people the login.
Oh, excuse me. Before you show it, I can't see you. If
that would be okay. So that would be good because glad to spoke up because I still haven't started using my system correctly. All right, so there we go. So then, boom. All right. So in Tract IQ, Tract IQ has, these are the lists that you've been calling on.
Right.
And you can create other lists. You can build prospect lists and do all sorts of cool stuff. So I'll show you in this, you'll see what we're looking for in a prospect and why these areas have been of interest. And so we put in the address. It's kind of like a batch leads type of software. Put in the address and I'm already here. So here it is. So immediately it tells us that square foot per capita in 3 miles is 3.44. 4 miles is the same. 5 miles is less. Then you also switch gears to, get drive time, 5, 10, 15. And it doesn't have any in 5 minutes. It has 5 here. It has 5 there. So this is a slightly underserved market. So what I'm then going to do is I analyze the deal both ways. Analyze it drive time, analyze it miles. And then download the PDF. Now this one's weird. If you leave the screen, it stops working. So you have to sit there and watch the gerbil. I'm not sure how they know, but whatever, they know. And then I go back again here and I switch it back to miles, radius, whatever. and I tell it again, reanalyze and download.
Mhm.
And then I take what you got, which is actually fairly complete. This guy actually gave a good amount of stuff.
Yeah,
And whatever else, I'm sorry?
no, I actually had to do a couple of like a voice like notes with him because he was giving so much I couldn't write it down so fast. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'll just take voice notes.
And in those cases, don't, feel free to ask them, say, listen, in Pennsylvania is a dual recording state. If either one of us are in the state of Pennsylvania, all parties have to agree to record.
Gotcha.
So, and that all depends on where people are, but it's just easier to say, listen, you're kind of going fast. Do you mind if I start recording this? And then turn on your, whatever tool on your phone you decide to use. And then, and I'll give you, I'll work you into this this tracker or whatever this I can give you access to. But we have several AIs, but we'll use the market deal analyzer and we'll use the quick deal estimator. Or will we? You're gonna be like that, are you? Okay, fine. And so we're going to give both of them everything we have, and you're going to say, and this prompt is built in. That's why I want to ease you into it because you got to remember to tell it. You say, okay, evaluate with given current info, and if expenses are not 40%, then increase expenses. My spelling has become horrible since I've started doing voice to text. And use 1.25 DSCR on 80%, 25-year, 7.5%, and on equity, 8% interest only. Now, this is my personal, and use any public you can find. And it has this built in, but I find AI, if you don't remind it every time, forgets. Okay, so I apparently did not download one of these when it finished executing. So I want to give it the radius and I want to give it the mileage. And I want to give both documents, and sometimes you have an operating memorandum from the broker, sometimes you have other stuff, whatever you have. You're giving it all of that. You're fine, okay, don't care. And then you're giving the exact same prompt to the other. So this is the market analysis GPT.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to run this, and then you're going to give the same stuff, but you're not going to run the property analysis GPT until the market analysis GPT gives us its answer. Because this is analyzing the market, and the other one takes everything and analyzes the property. Now, at his asking price, oh yeah, I forgot one other thing in the prompt is, okay, rerun without equity So you're going to give that a play. You're going to give this to this. And really what you're doing is you're letting the GPT tell us everything it can glean from the given information. So, and here's the short version, is it's already telling us with no equity cost, 1.25 DSCR, it's worth 1.9 million, which is 2.4 after you add 20% equity. And so what he wants is not necessarily going to meet, it's not going to meet our capital stack, and it's not going to meet bank capital stack. Bank capital stack being 1.25 of that. Take NOI. So what the 1.25 means is, so there's income, there's expenses, whether it's 40%, which is standard in everything but debt for self-storage, or whatever their real expenses are. And a lot of times you'll have, usually not an owner this big, but you'll have owners that are self-doing shit. And so their expenses are low because mom's mowing the grass, dad's doing the books, stoner cousin is sitting at the desk a few hours a week, and no one's actually getting paid. So that's why the 40% rule exists. And listen, right here, just 350. I know 350 won't pay a $3.5 million loan. So I knew it was going to be tough. It's not even a 10 cap. Storage is usually bought 6 to 8 cap. So it's definitely worth looking at. It's saying a true NOI of 192, and then it does its math from there. And so it's going to give you its valuation. So it's saying 2.2, and right here, your different cap rates. 6, which is fairly low for a tertiary market, is 3.21. 9 is 2.14. You're going to be probably in a smaller market. You're going to be in this range. So he's not terribly close to where the banker is going to want him to be. He's not even close to where he's further off from that, where I want to be. The reason I'm further away is because I want my money, I borrow my down payments. And I want the building to pay the interest on the borrowed down payment. I don't care about getting my down payment back. I care about not going negative. Reason for that is if it looks like I'm making 20 grand on a property, but I'm paying 8% on 200,000 in, so 16,000 in interest, I'm really only making 4,000 on a property. So I want to make sure that when it tells me I'm profiting X dollars, I'm actually profiting those dollars. And here's where you have issues in this market. Population declining, households are shrinking. So the future of this market, the reason he's selling out, ain't bright. It's not neutral, because within a couple tenths of a percent, it's going to call it a neutral market. So if it's going down negative, if it's going down 0.2%, it's going to call it a neutral market. Mm. And he's already at a high, he's already near the ceiling in his rates. And again, all of this gets reprocessed by, all of this gets reprocessed manually before we go back to him. We're like, okay, so we're going to go back to him and have a conversation today and say, listen, sir, here's the deal. If you would like to list it with us, if you'd like to let us find you a buyer, we might be the buyer, but if you'd like to make a deal with us, we can try. We're going to tell you, the reality is the buyer we're looking for to get you your price is not a traditional finance buyer. Unless you're willing to sell or finance, or you're willing to come down in price, we're looking for a specialty buyer who has the cash and is a little bit more generous in what they expect on return. Mm-hmm. And, so if you're willing to sell or finance, game changes. You're willing to come down in price, game changes. But so we'll go back to him with this without going 9 yards deep and say, sir, we're not personally the guys at 3.5. We can probably find you them unless you want to sell or finance. And here's why. And we give on that call, we give him the research. And here is where it really matters. At 3.5, the deal loses money. Anything under a 1 DSCR. DSCR is debt service coverage ratio. 1.0 means the net operating income equals the debt service. So the 1.25 means if the net operating income after expenses and non-debt costs is $1,250 a month, then it can afford a mortgage of $1,000. Because 1250 is 1.25 times 1,000. So by doing 0.78, it's saying that for every dollar you spend in mortgage, you're making 78 cents. You're grossing, or you're after expensing, your NOI is 78 cents. Obviously, that's great for him if somebody comes in and says, that's the deal I want. But the guy who buys it's going to be like, my bank wants $3,500 this month, and I have $2,700 total net operating income with no profit to me to give them. So I get to pay $700, and I'm making up numbers, but whatever. I get to pay $700 for the privilege of keeping this of owning this property. Thank you so much that I get to reduce what I owe. The old adage is, how do you make a small fortune in real estate? Start with a large fortune and make decisions like this. And it will tell us directly outline facts. And so on and so forth. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this answer, save it to a Word document. You're going to take this answer, save it to a Word document. And you're going to create a Google Drive and upload everything in the Google Drive. Anything he gives you, save it to a Word document. Any, Tract IQ downloads, save it to a Word document. And that's when it gets put into our data sheet, which I'm going to do this right now. And I'm going to open up a drive. And again, as you want, I'll give you access to doing these things, but I just want you to sort of see how and what the logic behind self-storage evaluation is. And I don't care if it should be 2 separate downloads or 3 separate downloads, but for the purposes of this one, and sometimes for the purpose of saving time, it's okay if you just separate them and you just label them. But as long as everything is in the Google Drive, so this is Bradford portfolio, all details, and then you download this, boom, boom, and then you upload it into the Google Drive. And this is how we're doing our form stuff as well, as you can just create a single Google Drive and just upload everything to it. And then you take the link. Now, one thing I just learned, and I don't know if I'm going to care about it or not, is that if you unrestrict and make it anyone with the link, it automatically gives Google the ability to parse the data. I don't think for this particular purpose I care, but if you leave it as the other model, restricted, it doesn't. I just found out it doesn't give Google that kind of access. And then you're just gonna, team notes, VA notes, fine, drive link. So then the next time, and this is every deal we look at for self-storage, I got to add the one from yesterday, and we put in here. So the next time, for whatever reason, 6 months down the line, he comes back to us, here's the evaluation. Here's everything we had on that property. Well, I just used this yesterday because the deal went to someone else, they failed on it, and it came back to us. So, boom, that's everything. So now the last thing I'm going to ask is, And now we're going to create one more Word doc out of this so that when we go back to call the seller, we got something, we can share with him the raw data, and we got something a little bit cleaner to share with him. And then that pretty much means we could, sometime later today or whatever, go ahead and call him back and say, hey, let's have a conversation. Have you got a half hour? Can you get your partner on the phone? So really the next step for you would be, hey, listen, can you and your partner get on the phone sometime today or tomorrow and walk through, we've done some research on your deal. We want to share some stuff with you, and be like, look, here's why, and let him tell us why not. This is a conversation of, your facility better. Now here's what's missing in what he gave us. So lots of things. So he's got fully remote managed, tenanting software and call center, very streamlined setup. He's transitioning his capital. He wants to sell all three together. Non-seller financing, that's fine. He's planning 1031. What we don't have is percentage occupancies. Is one of the first things I'm seeing we don't have. Which is, and that's a good question. Hey, what? How many are so there's how many exist? We have that. How many are occupied? And there's two portions of occupancy questions: physical and economic. So okay, we have 21 units. I'm going to make that. I'm going to make it. We have 100 units. So we have 100 units. 80 of them are occupied, but only 60 of them are paying. So we have 60% economic occupancy, 80% physical occupancy. And then the follow-up question is, of the occupied unpaying, are these like occasional oopses, they're just behind? Or are these ones where these people, a nice way to say, well, they never fix it and we're going to have to lock them out and have you started locking them out? Those are more advanced questions we'll get to. But just knowing, okay, he's 21, because he's 21 units climate controlled, he's whatever number of units. So if he's only 50% occupied, that's good to know, because then we will and also rent per unit size. At some point, a breakdown of what. Oh wait, I forgot. I didn't see that we have this. Okay, sorry. Let me rerun based on this. I forgot to include that. And let me put that in the drive as well.
Basically, that file that you just clicked. It's like 2 in 1.
Do what?
It's like 2 in 1. Like when you click it, it's not like one. Like you gotta. Like I don't really know how to explain it. Like when I opened it, it's like 2 different files in one sheet.
Yeah, you're right. He's got 2 different tabs. Okay, good. That's important because ChatGPT has a horrible. What do you call it? Habit of not being completely looking at data, basically. Like I gave it a zip file when I was rerunning a property, the one that went away and came back again. I gave it a zip file of like 20 documents, and it showed them all flying by on the screen. But then when I finished the evaluation, it said, you didn't give me any ChatGPT claimed it didn't have income information. And I said, well, that's funny. Did you look at these documents within the zip file I gave you? And I said, oh, no, I didn't look at those. Like, all right, dude, well, then why the fuck didn't you look at those? So it's important to say there are 2 tabs. Now, if it still won't, because that's why we don't run back to people based on GPT. If it still won't, then you got to say, okay, I got to download each tab as a separate document, or I got to cut and paste each tab in, or I got to do something to make sure it swallows all of this. And always look at all data, all pages, all tabs, and look at public resources. And you're literally forcing GPT to be as intelligent as it can be. And then when this is done, you're taking this, you're making a new Word doc. And again, all details because I had to redo it because I missed that document. I'm just going to reuse the document. Normally I would have created separate documents, but just for speed here, I'm just going to sort of skip the middleman. Because I'm going to take this answer when it finally finishes, paste it into a Word doc, save it. But still, it's still telling you that 1.15 is an okay number for the first year we own something if we go with an SBA loan. Second year, we have to get 1.25. So really, the information hasn't drastically changed. And, this is why we're going to tell the guy, hey, listen, this is now the information we're going to share with him in a
Yeah, and I'm looking at the notes from the call that I also had took. I think what I had did was, because what he had told me was he's telling me numbers based on what the potential revenue could be. So in my head, I did to figure out the occupancy. I was like, all right, well, what's the actual revenue divided by the potential revenue? And then I came up with like 83% occupied.
Okay, and that's a totally reasonable way to do it. That is a totally reasonable way to do it. And we just exactly, and basically, I mean, and as long as we're coming from so here's what brokers and sellers love to say, and they will put their asking price based on what's called pro forma, which is what I invent in my head is the possibility of what you might be able to do with the property. And I've seen pro formas that go from normal to, I think you're going to gain 10% over the next 5 years. All right, that's totally reasonable, whatever. To the pro forma that says, well, you're currently renting at market and you're currently 90% occupied. We think within 2 years you can rent for 125% of market and be 100% occupied in a market that's not increasing in size. Because we decided to make a pro forma that looks good for us. And anytime you see it say something like, I may not need to read this, you stop it and say, no, don't be lazy, read it. Because there's every broker wants to make the deal look, or seller wants to make. I mean, that's their job. They're making it look. They're gilding the lily. They're polishing the rust on the '64 Ford Fairlane, which now is a classic car, but back when I was growing up, it was a piece of shit. But they are. And then the one thing when ChatGPT stalls out, it doesn't always like to restart. So long way of saying pro forma, we don't care. What will be the next question once we get this is, okay, at expected growth, expected traditional growth, what is this thing worth in 5 years? And you'll see, like, they're going 42-45% range because they felt his expenses were too light. Now, one thing I forgot, and this is never a good thing to forget, is I forgot to run flood zone. And that's also an important criteria for the system, for all three addresses. So the pain in the butt here is you got to rerun all three addresses. But
Yeah. I got so caught up in the numbers, I definitely forgot that myself.
no, I mean, and listen, you'll never catch all the fish. You'll never catch all, and you don't have to, because flood zone is part of a due diligence later process. But you just want to look and be like, all right. And I can see right now that, okay, very little of Bradford is in flood zone. Okay, so orange is X, which is so non-colored means the chance of flooding is basically, we got bigger problems because Noah's Ark is being built. This orange it has 0.2% annual chance of flood hazard. So it's basically 0.2 of a percent, 0.002. Possible, yes, likely, no. The blue areas are where the banks are going to look at you and say, you want to do what? Great, you're going to get flood insurance on that spot. Orange is you should get flood insurance, but it's going to be cheap. Blue is anything A version, which is what's in blue, is, I say A is, run away. Because it can still work, but not necessarily. Like here's one. And give this a little bit of time to settle. This is a fairly slow tool, but by now it would have come up with colors if colors mattered. By the time you see the lines show up like this, it would have come up with colors if colors mattered. And you're never going to remember all of it, but it's like, okay. And what I should be doing, if I'm careful, is I should be PDFing these and downloading them or screenshotting them or making them save documents in some way. But okay, all three of his are not in flood zone, so that is no longer a cautionary tale. So small base demand, income's lower than we love. Yield limited rural asset. So nothing here says, it didn't say like huge tourism base. It didn't say like, Cape Canaveral down the street. Market sucks, but people want to come here. It doesn't say that, you're 3 blocks from a lake that's a great tourism location, so you're going to have boat and RV rentals spaces, whatever. So stabilized performance. So really we're coming down to the question of, okay, structural demand headwind, fine. 3.5, don't do it. Recommended play has not changed. Now, what's 5-year plan? And this one to me is my favorite, because what I will usually run into in a lot of these deals is that they're asking now less than it will be worth in 5 years when we sell it or refinance it or whatever. So, okay, you see right there. The optimistic is below. Now again, the market optimistic of what I'll probably sell it for is below his asking price. So literally, I mean, you saw the prompt is now we're going to ask it to write a letter and write a script. So when we call him later, we can say, hey, sir, here's the stuff you need. And we're going to download this as Bradford revised, and we're going to make a new one. We're going to download this one before we forget to. And we're going to make a new one that is Bradford seller response. And then we call them later. We're going off this script, and forevermore, everything we've learned is here in the spreadsheet. we're going to start the exact same thing I mean, you can answer the form questions individually, but when it asks for this upload, that upload, that upload, that upload, that upload, you can just dump it all into a drive link rather than uploading 14 files. And to say, hey guys, here's the drive link with the 14 files and all the PDFs and everything I've learned. Here it is. And still answering the questions that make sense to answer, but basically, I'm trying to say rather than hitting the upload button 14 times on the form, upload one. Upload right to the Google Drive and give you that. And so then the last thing we're going to do, and this is where chat gets weird, you copy this to the blank, and then you copy its actual answer. Because if you hit this copy button first, that first little block where it gave you a separate copy button won't get properly captured. Bradford seller response. We download this. Download this. Upload it into the drive. Not new folder. New file upload. Boom. So what we've learned at this point is that And chat loves to upsell its next activity. Do it if you think it makes sense. If he says, listen, I want 3.5, great. That's why it's lucky that you've been called by someone who's a licensed Pennsylvania broker who works in the commercial sector and works with one of the largest buyer sets of self-storage in the country. What do you mean by that? Well, our partners and mentors and investors that work with us are part of the Scott Myers organization, which if he knows anything about self-storage, Scott is the elephant in training people in self-storage. He's the #1 educator, consultant, whatever in self-storage. They're always buying stuff, and many of them will buy them more liberally than we will. Whether we find a real estate, whether we find a wealthy individual buyer, or whatever we find, many of them have more liberal criteria than we personally do. We have access to, and we're also a licensed PA real estate broker. We can put you out in all those worlds as well. And we can worry about who pays a fee later. That's not necessarily the question. You give us the trust to be your broker. Our contract builds in a fee, but we very often get the buyer to pay that fee. So kind of walks him past that. And because really, at this point, we've told him that, hey, we can't give you this money. And we can't give you this money because in 5 years, it won't be worth this money. You're in a declining market. You've got very low incomes in Bradford, 44,000 average. You've got a marginal. Now, what's in the document? The last thing I wanted to show you is what's in the PDFs that Tract IQ gives. Because these are actually pretty detailed. It doesn't matter if I use the mileage one or the whatever. So it's a beautiful little report. I mean, this would cost him $500-600 just to get. So when we're giving this for free, here's how many self-storage facilities. Here's the current square foot per capita. And you and I know that the national average is 7 and 10 square foot per person.
All right.
6. He's a little low. He's not terribly low. But and we haven't looked at crime rates. That's something else we didn't do yet. But median household income, that's not great. When you're in this lower bucket of earners, they're storing crap they need. They're not storing their extra jet skis, which is great. It's crap they need. However, they're down to the point where, oh crap, I have a flat tire. Now I can't pay my storage bill. And maybe the stuff I needed, I no longer need because I need a tire or else I can't get to work. Here's your rents, pretty crap low rents. Again, low income area, of course it is. Now, one of these in here, I'm not going to be able to find it, of course, now. Population by ethnicity, population by sex, we don't care about that one. Males, population and growth. So one of these is rental households, and I forget where it is. Current projected, current families. That was because the word rent is in there. Okay. So one of these, and it's not coming up for me now. One of these is what the percentage of tenants. I can just ask Chat because it has it all. Renter occupied. Okay, this is actually okay. Above a third is what you typically want. But again, population declining, households declining, no new housing supply, no new demand creation, bluntly no reason. So you've got a moderately undersupplied market. You've got no reason people are moving there. And you've got really low incomes. So when we're talking to him, we're not saying we think you're nuts. We're saying look at it from the buyer's perspective. This is what you're making now. None of the indicators really indicate you're going to make more in the future. If anything, they indicate it's going to get softer. Population's down, incomes are down, people are not exactly moving to the area. So if you want the 3.5, we're the best brokerage you ever met. If you want to come down to the 2.5 range, we can start having more of a buyer conversation. And if he's happy with his current profit, and we can talk. You want to talk seller finance, you want to talk whatever, great. Now we also didn't get into questions of what his current debt load is, because we could have a conversation. Hey, listen, if you've got a low interest loan, we could take over the balance of the loan. We can get fancier if he wants to get fancier, but basically we have to find out if it's even worth having the plate.
Mm-hmm. You want me to text them and ask them what is it?
Yeah, see if we can set something up for either later today or actually almost preferably tomorrow morning when I'm driving down to Allentown. But I mean, I can do either one. I don't care. I mean, here's the thing: from a reality standpoint, he's reporting $235,000 in pocket money. Don't know if he has debt. And we can actually look up what it is. So he's not showing a mortgage in the financials. There may not be one. But I mean, right now he's making 20 grand a month off this thing. So he might just be like, you know what, guys, if I can't get my 3.5, I'll keep it. All right, no problem. We can list it for you if you want. We can see what we can do on it. No skin, no loss, no foul. But yeah, basically, now that we know all this, reach out to him and say, hey, listen, when can we have another conversation? When can we, basically, I'm pretty flexible, especially like in the block from 4 to 7. I'm pretty flexible. Just text me with a couple options, because I've got a bunch of things scheduled the rest of the day, but I'll make time for this. But this is definitely, this is definitely exactly the kind of guy you want to talk to. You want to talk to a seller who wants to talk. Whether he wants to talk in one of the options we can offer him, we won't know till we try. And then he still goes in the seller file, and we still check back with him every month to say, hey, listen, we talked last month. I've been seeing some movement on the storage community. We've got some more people interested. Have you had any further thoughts? Something like that. This is also the kind of guy, if you started focusing on self-storage, I can feed you self-storage market data, which is going to say things are starting to suck. Prices are going down. And hey, just so you know, like nationally, the ground is kind of softening under values. You sure you want to hang in there? If I were him and I had no debt, I'd take out a loan on this thing. If I wanted cash.
Yeah, it could be a good one, because when I spoke to him, he was like, well, I'm not looking to list it. I'm looking to like sell it direct to a buyer or like to a buyer. So I was like, oh,
yeah. Right. I mean, and there's absolutely nothing that, we won't know till we try.
Right.
The last thing I want to show is when you find out. Now this is the number. Mortgagecalculator.org is my favorite one. But what I've done is I've said, okay, what's his NOI? Now this is his NOI on a monthly basis. So if I took every dime of NOI which I shouldn't. That's not 1.25. And I said, I want to buy I want to buy, here's my NOI, this is what I want to do. Whoop, loan amount cannot be greater. Okay, fuck you. All right, so if I wanted to spend oh, I see. So they've changed their algorithm, I see. So $3 million, boom. $3 million is $22,000. So if he took no profit, none, he couldn't afford a $3 million loan on the property. It wouldn't pay it. He would have to be like a 2.5, 2.6 if he didn't put a dime in his pocket. Now, that might work for him. It won't work for us, but it might work for him because he could go and put 2.5 tax-free $1 million in his pocket and just let the property pay the mortgage. Just be like, screw it. I took my $2.5 million and I'm done. Property management company will pay mortgage. No dollars will come out. If the property value dips, if the income dips down a little bit, I might have to babysit it, but I have $2.5 million in my bank, tax free. Right. So he's in a position. Of course, would the bank appraise it for it? All these other questions, maybe. But the point is, he's in a position where he doesn't have to do that. Basically. So yeah. So give him a call and see what.
I just texted him and he said anytime after 5 works. Does that work for you guys?
All right. So if it's after 5, say probably. If just respond probably, we'll let you know soon. If not, what time tomorrow? Because I've got my wife and I are going to go to dinner, and I just don't know exactly when that's going to be. I know it's going to be after I drop my daughter off. It's going to be between 4 and 7, so I just don't know exactly. But I think today's Thursday, so I think I'm probably good till about 6 anyway. But just say probably we'll get back soon. If not, what time tomorrow?
Okay.
And then I'll as soon as I hang up, I'll check with Kelly and see what she says. Now, where the bank wants us to be is the bank wants us to be under 15,000. So the bank wants to borrow 1.9 or $2 million. So the bank is going to possibly say no to this deal if we're borrowing more than 2 million, which means a 2.4, maybe even a little less than 2.4 purchase price, 2.3, 2.4. So we got a lot of reasons to say to them, listen, it's great you want 3.5, but you're not really there. I will push. I will try to do 5 o'clock exactly and give about 30 minutes. That way we can keep it today, but I just got to double check with my wife.
Okay.
All right. But yeah, so basically, I mean, again, but this is the kind of fish you want to catch. You've got a direct seller. He's interested in talking. It's the old story about, we've now determined what you are. Now we're just negotiating price. There's an old Winston Churchill joke about prostitutes. And we know he's a seller. He's an interested seller. He wants to take action. Now it's just a matter of, he picked a number and now we picked a number and we can explain ours and let's see where it goes.
Got you. Yeah, I figured this would be like, that's why I said it might be like right up your alley. Like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.